Successful, hardworking, 26-year-old and devoted single mother, Latoya Taylor suddenly goes missing, leaving family and friends shocked and scared by her disappearance. The investigation into her disappearance reveals a surprising love triangle that ultimately leads to murder. The question remains, what happens when love turns fatal? This is the Fatal Attraction Podcast with Capital Murder, Latoya Taylor.
She was a hard-working single mom, determined to make it.
She was going to make sure she provided for those kids.
She was staunchly independent. She didn't need a man.
She had a great job and her own home.
But on the verge of achieving all her dreams, she vanishes.
She does not pick up her children that evening.
This is not like her.
I just knew this ain't right.
Does this devoted mother have something to hide?
She's almost in this tug of war.
Hi, excuse me? Can I help you?
She just felt like something was missing.
You serious right now?
That was a completely other life.
But would it cost her everything?
They were like, no, you don't want to see her like this.
The bullet hole obviously was the cause of death.
This is a homicide.
I ain't got nothing to say to you.
It's just a tragedy that shouldn't have happened. How did you do something to my child?
June 13th, 2003. It's a hot Friday evening in Prince George's County, Maryland, a sprawling suburb on the edge of Washington, D.C.
It's a fairly urban area. There's about 1 million people in Prince George's County.
At 6 p.m., many of the commuters are heading home after working in the nation's capital.
Lots of federal government workers lived in the suburbs of Prince George's County.
It's more family-oriented and has more of a small-town feel.
By 7 o'clock, one federal employee, Latoya Taylor, hasn't made it home yet.
Hello?
And her mother receives a troubling phone call.
What?
It was the daycare, and they were calling and saying, Latoya's late. She needs to pick the kids up.
I understand. Let me try to call her.
That immediately set off alarm bells. Latoya would never leave her children at daycare.
She's always there, and if she can't be there, she always makes arrangements for somebody to get her children.
Not even kind of just sending my mother a message going, hey, I'm going to be late or what have you, nothing. It was just very out of place.
Latoya's mother tries repeatedly to contact her daughter.
And it went to voicemail. So I called it again. And I'm like, Latoya, where are you?
Baby, if you get this, give me a call. Let me know that you're okay. I'm gonna go and pick up the kids now.
No one had heard from her. All of a sudden, Latoya was missing.
26-year-old Latoya Taylor was a hardworking single mother who came from a tradition of government service.
Her mom was a police officer, so there was always police officer friends around, and it was just a lifestyle that she was accustomed to being around, and she enjoyed it.
She started clerical when she first started working for the federal government. And then as she saw other job openings, she decided that she wanted to go after those positions.
It was important for Latoya to be independent. She wanted to be able to handle her life her own way and take care of her business. And that's exactly what Latoya did.
After years of clerical work, Latoya had landed an administrative job with the Internal Revenue Service.
The IRS doesn't hire just anyone. They make sure they vet every employee. And for Latoya to have passed every interview, every application process was a big deal. She definitely wanted to be well off and have a life that she would feel comfortable for herself and her children.
By 1998, Latoya was a proud mother of 2, and while the relationships with her children's fathers hadn't worked out, she was determined to give her kids everything.
Everything she did was just in an effort to take care of her kids. She loved her children very much, would do anything for her kids. She was just a great mom.
She did her best to raise them and take care of them.
But she wouldn't have to do it alone forever. In the fall of 1999, Latoya reconnected with an old flame from high school, 24-year-old Issa Santiago, and quickly fell in love.
Latoya and Issa rekindled the flame, and sparks flew. Issa was tall, Issa was handsome, he was charming.
However, it wasn't just Issa's looks that attracted Latoya.
He would come over and he would help with the kids, and she loved that about him, but she was in love with him. She was very much in love with him.
There was definitely passion in the relationship that the two of them had together. They definitely had a fiery relationship.
Ever since they were in high school, there was something about Issa that kept Latoya coming back for more.
The couple's bond seemed solidified when Latoya and Issa welcomed a child of their own.
In September 2002, they had a baby girl. She was beautiful. Issa and Latoya were proud parents.
Even with a newborn, Issa and Latoya never took the next step in their relationship and lived separately while raising their daughter and continuing their romance. While the situation came with challenges, it seemed to work for the couple.
Latoya and Issa was just this bond that no one else could understand.
They still wanted to be together, but just not every day.
Is she asleep?
From Latoya's perspective, she loved Issa, but she was not about to allow herself to be dependent on a man.
She was one of the first of her friends to have her own home.
Latoya was doing just fine. She didn't need to cohabitate to co-parent.
That's just the type of person she was, able to work on her own and not worry about anybody helping her.
I gotta go.
Okay.
And while Latoya didn't worry about needing the help, Issa also wanted to provide for his daughter.
He was there. He was willing to contribute financially. Even though Latoya managed on her own, she's not going to turn down child support.
He was paying money underneath the table, if you will, not pursuant to a court order. He was giving Latoya money for diapers and help with daycare expenses.
They seemed to have this oddly yet unique family.
But on the evening of June 13th, 2003, this family would be ripped apart by a distressing phone call.
She didn't make it home to get her kids. I called her phone immediately. I'm leaving messages. What's going on? No answer.
With her growing concern, Latoya's mother, Felicia Cole, makes a call to the IRS office where her daughter works.
Hello, may I speak to Latoya Taylor, please?
It was possible Latoya had gotten held up at work for some reason and just forgot to call.
What Felicia learns next will send her into a panic.
Oh, I see.
They told me Latoya had left.
All right, thank you.
She had left at lunchtime and she hadn't come back. And she never done that before. This was surprising to me because 5 minutes before Latoya went to lunch, I was on the phone with her.
It's now clear to Felicia that her daughter is missing under suspicious circumstances.
Nobody knows where she is. Nobody has heard from her.
Everyone's freaking out. It was an absolute nightmare.
More secrets are revealed once we return with more Fatal Attraction.
In June of 2003, 26-year-old Latoya Taylor appeared to be on the fast track to success.
She was doing very well. She had her job with the IRS. She had her own place. She was raising her kids and just being a great mom.
But on the evening of June 13th, The devoted mother of 3 failed to pick up her kids from daycare.
Hello?
The daycare called her mom. And that's when it just started to go downhill.
What?
I'm like, something's got to be terribly wrong. Latoya would never not come and get her kids.
During the drive to pick up Latoya's children from daycare, her mother, herself an officer with Prince George's County PD, calls her commanding officer.
Her mother actually was a Prince George's County police officer at the time, so she knew the proper procedures to get the resources going.
Yes. Could you go ahead and get that started for me?
And I told my sergeant that I need someone to run by the subway station and check for her car.
What her fellow officers find confirms her worst fears.
They got to the subway and they saw a car there. Once they found a car, I knew that was it. Something was wrong.
Prince George's County Police open a formal investigation into Latoya's disappearance.
At that point, it's like a race of time to find out what happened to her and where's she at.
Detectives' first move is to review the security footage from the IRS building where Latoya worked.
It was a federal building. There were cameras everywhere.
The surveillance footage from the IRS shows Latoya leaving the building.
She starts angling over to the left, and unfortunately, there's a truck in the way. After a few seconds, this truck pulls off, and then you see this Jeep Cherokee. You do not see her get in the Jeep on video.
However, when the truck drives away, there's no sign of Latoya anywhere in the parking lot.
That was that. That was where the trail ended. Investigators know they need to find that Jeep.
Unfortunately, the surveillance video gives them little in the way of clues.
We tried to run down the Jeep Cherokee itself, but the video did not give a license plate.
As night falls, detectives track down one of Latoya's friends from work.
They interviewed a friend of Latoya Taylor's, found out what was going on.
Anything unusual or out of the ordinary happened with Latoya today?
Not really.
According to this friend, Friday had started out like any other day.
She got in there on time. She was working up until around 1 o'clock when she was going to take her lunch, which was normal.
Then at lunchtime, Latoya's routine suddenly changed.
She canceled lunch that she would regularly do with her coworkers, and she left that day.
She said she had to go get money.
She said she was going to the bank or an ATM.
She didn't really say. She just left, and that was the last time I saw her.
With the security footage and Latoya's coworker an apparent dead end, detectives reach out to Latoya's mother.
They came out to my house. They just started trying to take reports, just trying to track her steps.
I'm sorry, ma'am. We're doing everything we can.
I know. It's still hard.
We found surveillance footage of her leaving work, possibly getting into a Jeep.
I don't know of anyone who owns one.
Detectives knew they had to ask tough questions, but they needed to know if one of Latoya's exes would have wanted to harm her, maybe out of jealousy.
Latoya's children's fathers would never have harmed a hair on her body.
Is there anyone else in her life we should talk to?
Isa Santiago, that's her boyfriend.
Are they living together?
No, their setup is very unusual.
Unusual household.
Latoya was fiercely independent. She wasn't in a hurry to have Isa move into her space, into her home, which she earned on her own. Detectives knew they needed to speak with him.
Here's his number. Find my daughter.
We will.
On Saturday, June 14th, detectives contact the father of Latoya's 9-month-old daughter and ask him to come in for an interview.
When a woman goes missing, the first person the police are going to look at are the males that are closest to her.
He's her boyfriend. They just had a baby together. Isa is the closest man to Latoya at this point.
That afternoon, Issa Santiago arrives at the station and sits down with detectives.
All right, thanks for coming in to talk to us, Mr. Santiago.
No problem. Have you guys heard anything about Toya yet? Her mom called me.
He's just as concerned as everybody else that she's missing.
He told investigators he would do anything to help find where Latoya was.
Now, when was the last time you saw Latoya?
Last weekend. I went over to see my baby girl.
Have you spoke to her since then?
Yesterday morning. Called at work.
Issa had just spoken to Latoya on the phone, and everything seemed normal. Everything was fine.
And did she say anything about lunch plans?
No. We just talked about our daughter. I was supposed to go see her this Sunday.
So we and Latoya get along?
Of course we do.
He says they was on good terms. Everything is fine with them. You know, there's no problem with him and Toya.
But you don't live together?
No, we don't.
Why is that?
It's a little complicated.
Tell us about it.
What Issa tells detectives next adds an explosive new angle to the case.
Investigators are shocked to find out that Issa is actually married.
He also had this other life as well.
And now detectives wanted to know, did the love triangle have anything to do with Latoya's disappearance?
Hi, excuse me?
More secrets are revealed once we return with more Fatal Attraction.
You're out here hustling, but you're also using the McDonald's app to have your favorites delivered to your door. That's hustling smarter. Order McDelivery in the McDonald's app. At participating McDonald's.
Detectives investigating Latoya Taylor's disappearance have just uncovered the shocking truth about her relationship with Issa Santiago.
In addition to being the father of Latoya's 9-month-old daughter, Issa was also married to another woman.
As he described it, there was a bit of a love triangle going on between the three of them.
Look, I didn't mean for it to happen that way. It just did.
The dating relationship between Issa and Toya was a fiery one. I think that they felt as though they loved one another, but Issa wasn't always faithful.
Issa tells detectives during his on-again, off-again relationship with Latoya, he met and fell in love with a woman named Ava.
Ava became his primary focus. He was spending more and more time with her and less with Latoya.
But you kept seeing Latoya even after you married Ava?
Yeah.
Under no circumstances was he going to leave his wife for Latoya, but then he also wasn't leaving Toya. He wanted both.
At first, Issa had tried to keep the situation a secret from both of the women in his life, but Latoya eventually found out.
What's that?
I need to talk to you.
You serious right now?
She was very upset. She had spent the latter part of her teenage years, the earlier part of her 20s, dealing with him. And so for him to go and get married was a complete disruption to the life that they were going to have together.
Toya.
According to Issa, Latoya eventually came to accept the situation.
It's a tug of war where she wants to shut him out of her life and her relationship, but then she wants to keep that door open because she's in love with this man.
Latoya and Issa's affair continued, although there was one person who was left in the dark.
He clearly did not want his wife to know that he was still dealing with Latoya.
According to Issa, in the spring of 2002, things suddenly became more complicated.
Toya and Ava were pregnant at the same time, both with girls who ended up being only a few months apart.
Once Latoya realized she was carrying Issa's baby, she decided to make a more brazen move.
Hi, excuse me.
Can I help you?
Yes. My name is Latoya, and Issa and I have been in a relationship. I swear I didn't know anything about you. I just found out he was married.
Toya wanted her to know that I exist, we have a relationship, we've had a relationship, and I'm now pregnant, and we need to figure this out.
According to Issa, he came home to find the women face to face.
Toya, what are you doing?
Really?
He decided that he did not like what he thought was going on. Them talking and discussing him.
It probably made you mad, huh?
Ava was gonna find out eventually.
How'd Ava take it?
Not well.
Issa says he smoothed things over with Ava by promising the affair was over. But in secret, he continued to see Latoya and his child.
He and his wife and Latoya ended up in a pretty rocky love triangle. And unfortunately, a lot of drama comes in those situations.
But did this domestic drama have something to do with Latoya's disappearance?
Where were you yesterday around 1 o'clock?
Me and Ava went running errands until we picked the baby up from daycare.
And when was this?
4:30.
If he was telling the truth, that would give Issa and Ava alibis for when Latoya disappeared.
You're free to go.
Thank you.
After talking to Issa, detectives need to verify details of his statement.
They discovered some interesting facts that Issa conveniently left out.
Issa Santiago and Latoya Taylor had a 2001 documented case where there was a domestic incident. Although Issa was never convicted, he was charged.
Police reports were filed. The charge ended up getting dropped.
Detectives also discovered that Latoya had taken out an order of protection against Ava.
Ava had also filed one against Latoya.
She was mad at her husband, but she seemed to be more mad at Toya for messing with her husband, for having a baby with her husband, as if Toya had done these things by herself.
Considering the animosity between them, detectives decide it's time they talked to Ava Santiago.
Thanks for coming in to talk to us, Ms. Santiago.
I ain't got nothing to say to you.
I just have a few questions to ask you.
Well, I'm not answering them.
She kept telling the police she wanted to speak to a lawyer.
Detectives promptly end the interview, with their suspicions of Ava now heightened.
Sit tight.
Why wouldn't the wife be a suspect? He had an ongoing relationship with Latoya while he was in this marriage.
I definitely don't put it past her to have had something to do with it, especially if she knew about, this whole love triangle with my sister.
Had Ava done something to her rival?
Issa's story gave her an alibi, but he could have been covering for his wife.
However, before detectives take a closer look at Ava, they get a phone call that changes everything.
DC police believe they found the mysterious Jeep from the surveillance video.
It's found burning at 5 o'clock in the morning.
When investigators found out who the car belonged to, it took the investigation to a whole new level.
More secrets are revealed once we return with more Fatal Attraction.
One morning, you just walk in with a bag of everyone's faves from McDonald's, drop it on the counter, and say, breakfast is on me. Boom! That's the power of saving money on the McDonald's app. Hope you can handle all that. Save money with the app. At participating McDonald's, must opt into rewards.
Sunday, June 15th, 2003. It's been 48 hours since Latoya Taylor walked out of her office at lunchtime and disappeared. But detectives have just received a tip that could be the key to solving the mystery.
DC police were called to the report of a vehicle fire on Spring Road in Northwest Washington.
The burnt-out vehicle is a dark-colored Jeep.
The Jeep matched the one in the surveillance footage that detectives believe Latoya got into before she went missing.
There's no body. No one perished in the fire.
Police run the Jeep's license plate through the registration database and make an alarming discovery.
They're shocked to learn that it's registered to the Santiagos, Issa and Ava.
The records also revealed that Issa recently reported the Jeep stolen.
However, it's when the car was reported stolen that makes detectives take note.
He didn't make the report until after they discovered the car on fire. Go figure.
Issa told investigators that he drove home as usual, parked it. The next morning, he came out and the vehicle was gone.
Detectives working the Latoya Taylor case find that hard to believe.
First, there was the fact that Issa and Ava owned a Jeep very similar to the one spotted when Latoya disappeared.
And then, oh, wait a second. All of a sudden, his Jeep is stolen. And then, on top of that, it set afire. There's not that much coincidence in the world. There just isn't.
Detectives have the burned Jeep towed to the crime lab for analysis and immediately find more reason to doubt Issa's story.
The ignition isn't what we call popped. The car wasn't hot-wired, anything of that nature.
The forensic team also finds that some of the Jeep's interior survived the fire.
Even though the Jeep was burned, it didn't burn up everything. In the back, we still had some carpet that you could get some good samples from.
However, the forensic search fails to turn up any evidence of foul play.
Tests didn't turn up any traces of blood or anything of that nature. Nothing to put Latoya in that vehicle.
Detectives still don't know what happened to Latoya. They hope a subpoena for her phone records will generate a lead.
This is still a missing persons report. Nobody's been accused of a crime at this point. So they really got Latoya's records to see if they might show at least where her phone is.
This is 2003. We didn't have the tracking that we know today.
We're not talking about GPS-type locations. We're talking about what cell tower is the phone pinging off of. So you can't pinpoint anybody based on this technology, but you can get general areas.
Tracing the towers Latoya's phone pinged off of gives detectives a clear idea of her movements after she walked out of the IRS building on Friday afternoon.
Her cell phone basically tracks down Route 5 onto Route 3. It's a southern highway going down through Maryland into Charles County, and maybe a mile or so before the Potomac River Bridge.
Then in the tiny rural town of Newburgh, Maryland, 33 miles from Prince George's County, Latoya's phone stops moving.
Newburgh, Maryland is off the beaten path. It's not DC at all. No one knew why Latoya had any business being that far away from her home.
That tower in Newburgh was picking up Latoya's cell phone with over 100 phone calls that were unanswered.
When you have all of these phone calls hitting off one tower, you know that that phone was not moving.
On Thursday, June 19th, DC detectives drive to Newburgh to assist in the search.
In that search area, you had the Charles County Sheriff's Office, the DC Police, Prince George's County Police, the Natural Resources Police. It really was a collaborative effort.
It is nothing but fields and woods off of 301. You're only a mile or so from the bridge. There's not much out there at all.
After hours of searching, one officer alerts the search team.
I think I see something up here.
It was back up off the road in a wooded area that no one would be in.
He approached that area and ultimately found what was a decomposed body.
She is wrapped in 2 large black plastic trash bags with duct tape holding them together.
Detectives are fairly certain the dead woman is Latoya Taylor.
It's a Black woman wearing a denim dress similar to what Latoya Taylor had worn on the day of her disappearance.
She's out there in the field for a week. The temperatures were exceedingly hot at that time, and there was a lot of decomposition.
Despite the condition of the body, one thing is immediately clear.
There's a bullet hole in the back of her head.
Investigators believe this is no longer a missing persons case. This is a homicide.
More secrets are revealed once we return with more Fatal Attraction.
One morning, you just walk in with a bag of everyone's faves from McDonald's, drop it on the counter, and say, breakfast is on me. Boom! That's the power of saving money on the McDonald's app. Hope you can handle all that. Save money with the app. At participating McDonald's, must opt into rewards.
June 19th, 2003. In a field near Newburgh, Maryland, 33 miles from Prince George's County, police have just found the body of a woman they believe is missing mother of three, Latoya Taylor.
Detectives found her wrapped in garbage bags with a gunshot wound to her head.
There are no shell casings. There are no bullets. There's only a body.
The vegetation was mashed down, and it looked like a vehicle had maybe driven up to where the body was left.
When detectives survey the ground where the body had been, they find a crucial piece of evidence.
Latoya Taylor's phone was actually found underneath of her body in that field.
They charged the phone, turned it on, and quickly determined the phone was Latoya's, which meant the body was most certainly Latoya Taylor.
The news is devastating to Latoya's friends and family.
It's bittersweet because we was able to bring her home, but it wasn't the way we wanted her to come home.
I couldn't believe they just told me that my sister was not alive.
He told me they needed to talk to me.
And said they found a body. I thought my world was over.
The next day, the medical examiner performs an autopsy and finds no evidence of a struggle, nor any traces of the killer's DNA. But she does recover one potentially useful clue from Latoya's remains.
The autopsy was able to find a couple of carpet fibers. Those carpet fibers were eventually compared to the carpet from the rear of the burnt-out Santiago Jeep, and they came back from the FBI as being consistent with the fibers that were found in that Jeep.
Those fibers proved that Latoya Taylor had been in that Jeep after she was killed.
With this bombshell piece of forensic evidence, detectives turn up the heat on their main suspects, Latoya's boyfriend, Issa Santiago, and his wife, Ava.
At that point, detectives weren't sure if Issa or Ava were behind the murder or if both were involved.
Investigators get a search warrant to search the Santiago's home.
We did do search warrants, which did not turn up a handgun. We didn't find anything.
No handguns, no ammunition, no bloody clothing. Nothing to indicate they were involved in the homicide.
Next, detectives turn their attention to the couple's alibi for the afternoon of the murder.
Issa had told investigators that he and Ava had been running errands all day and they had picked up the baby together.
But when detectives contact the daycare to see if Ava and Issa picked up their child together, his story collapses.
According to people at the daycare, Ava had been alone.
A call to Ava's employer reveals that the rest of Issa's story about running errands with her is also a lie.
Ava's employer told investigators that she had been at work all day.
We know that she was at work at least as of 4:45, which means that she would not have been with him.
Ava is now crossed off investigators' list. But if Issa wasn't with his wife, where was he? Hoping to track Issa's movements the afternoon Latoya was killed, detectives subpoena his cell phone records.
Once you start looking at the phone records, then things really come into sharp focus. Because if you take a look at the location of Santiago's phone that he was using and Latoya Taylor's phone, you see both those phones basically at the same time marching down from Prince George's County into southern Maryland, both of them.
The cell phones paint the picture that clearly Issa and my sister were together.
Detectives track both phones all the way to the field outside Newburgh where Latoya's body was found.
My sister's cell phone stays out there with her. His cell phone comes back.
After comparing the phone records, Detectives feel they have enough evidence to make an arrest, but it will take almost a year to get the warrant they need to bring Issa in.
It wasn't until the grand jury handed down their indictment that the Maryland State Police were able to locate Issa and apprehend him.
On May 24th, 2004, 11 months after finding Latoya's body, the authorities take Issa Santiago into custody.
Issa did not put up a fight. He was brought into the Forestville barrack, and he invokes his right to an attorney.
Look, I'm not saying anything.
We don't need you to.
What do you mean?
Latoya was seen getting into a Jeep you own. We have forensic evidence that proves that she was in your car the day she died. And your phone put you in Newburgh where the body was found. It was you, Issa.
Stand up.
I want my lawyer.
Stand up.
Issa was ultimately charged with second-degree murder.
Now that Issa Santiago is in jail, the question is whether or not prosecutors can keep him there.
This is a circumstantial case, and circumstantial cases are always a problem.
They didn't have any witnesses. They didn't have a murder weapon. And they didn't have a murder location.
There was a real concern Issa Santiago was going to get off scot-free.
More secrets are revealed once we return with more Fatal Attraction.
May 24th, 2004.
Hands behind your back.
Detectives arrest Issa Santiago for the murder of 26-year-old Latoya Taylor, the mother of his now 20-month-old daughter.
When investigators finally arrested Issa, they wanted a solid case. They wanted evidentiary support. They wanted justice for Latoya Taylor.
It took a while. They were not going to rush and not be able to pursue the charges. Even though I didn't like it, I was fine with it. Because I knew once they got him, that was it.
Now it's up to prosecutors to make the murder charge stick.
We did not have any eyewitness to say that I saw him shoot Latoya Taylor or that I saw Issa Santiago dump this body in that field.
However, building their case in the months before Issa's arrest, detectives did uncover a motive.
Issa and Latoya had a court date coming up on June the 18th for child support.
Just 5 days after Latoya was reported missing, prosecutors contend Issa was willing to contribute, but he did not want it to be a matter for the courts or his wife, Ava.
He was okay just as long as it was on his terms. If he could do it at night and just give a little bit of money here and his wife not know, he's fine.
Latoya was not okay with the situation. The payment became sporadic, and he was coming by all hours of the night handing money off.
He was giving Latoya money, but as far as being court-ordered to pay it, yeah, that's a different level.
The moment Latoya went to court and filed child support legally, Issa had a problem. Investigators suspect that may have been a motive for murder.
When Issa stands trial in February of 2006, the prosecution lays out what they believe transpired the day Latoya was killed.
June 13th, they did make connection with each other very briefly over the phones in the morning.
Hi, Latoya speaking.
Which, in our view, that was the setup.
Hey, it's me. I got that money for you. Can you meet me at lunch?
Fine. I'll come out front.
Investigators believe Issa was the one, in fact, to pick up Latoya from the IRS building at lunchtime.
Have you got the money?
I have to go buy an ATM.
Okay.
According to the prosecution, Issa lured Latoya away from work for the sole purpose of killing her.
She got in the car with him and then was never heard from again.
He drove her somewhere, maybe under a bridge or some secluded area, wanting to talk about the court case. No one knew except for Issa.
Serious? After all that I do for those kids, and you're gonna try to take me to court?
You want to do right by our daughter? Then show up to court.
Everything was fine until you filed those papers.
Go, look, Issa, I don't have time for this. Take me to work now.
What?
He cowardly puts a bullet in the back of her head. And then he goes into cover-up mode. He cleans up and he bags her up, puts tape around her to hold her there. He starts driving down to Charles County, dumps her body, and drives back up.
According to prosecutors, the final piece of the puzzle was tracking the phones of both Issa and Latoya.
The cell phones are aligned, going in the same path. It's a no-brainer that he was driving the vehicle that took my sister to this field where she was dumped at and left there.
Prosecutors theorized that Issa must have disposed of the gun on the way back from Newburgh. Then, once back in D.C., after detectives started asking questions about Latoya's disappearance, Issa disposed of his Jeep, too.
To back up their theory, prosecutors presented the jury with the tiny carpet fibers recovered from Latoya's body that matched the interior of Issa's Jeep.
The forensics, the phone records, and the upcoming child support hearing all pointed to Issa as Latoya's killer.
There's proof and then there's proof, right? There's just too much coincidence for any reasonable fact finders to say, well, maybe this, maybe that.
Will the jury agree? On March 1st, 2006, the verdict is read.
Issa was found guilty of second-degree murder. He was sentenced to 55 years.
For Latoya's family, the possibility that Issa could ever be released falls far short of justice.
I don't think that he should ever be allowed to come out.
Part of me is still even more angry that he just absolutely refuses to admit to it and won't give the family some closure and tell us what happened.
With the trial behind them, all Latoya's family can do is continue to try to pick up the pieces.
Part of my heart was lost when I lost Latoya. It sounds crazy because I'm still breathing, but I stopped really breathing. I stopped really living.
I've made it a point to kind of be closer to my family members and make sure that I kind of just treasure every moment and don't take anything for granted.
There's still a part of me that just feels like I'm never gonna ever be the same person I used to be. She's supposed to be here.
Latoya Taylor's PG County, Maryland community is left shocked by her horrific murder with questions still unanswered. Latoya's family continues to mourn her death and treasure the life of their loved one. Sadly, the murder is a tragic reminder of how love can turn deadly. Coming up on the next episode of the Fatal Attraction podcast.
She was beautiful. She was a light when she came into a room.
She had an ambitious, really illuminated future for herself.
But just as her life is really beginning, it comes to a sudden and horrific halt.
Camera number 1.
It's my friend. I think she's dead.
A shocking crime that no one could have predicted. Secrets are unraveled and a family and town are left stunned. What happened to 19-year-old college-bound musician Africa Hardy, and what happens when love becomes fatal? Tune in to the next episode of the Fatal Attraction podcast. We will see you in the next episode.